Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Yarnflakes Podcast. My name is Audrey. I am a knitwear designer from the southwest of France, and this is a podcast where I share my fiber arts creations. So thank you so much for joining me for this new episode. I hope you're doing very well. I have a nice episode with you. Not that the other ones aren't nice, but in this one I have quite a few varied things, and I always like when I have a bunch of very different projects to share with you, because I like to do very varied things, but I know it's not everyone's taste. So whenever I have a bunch of everything, I feel like maybe there's something for everyone. And this time I have a Colourwork sock design to show you. Then I also have another design to mention, which you may already know because it was published in a magazine, and it is another sock, but this time textured. And then I have two works in progress that I want to share with you. One is a big, cozy, cabled jumper, and the other one is a more simple, textured stole that is going to be using lots of different colors. So I'm just going to start right away. So you can find timestamps to all the different sections of the podcast in the description down below. So if you want to skip anything, or if you'd like to find a project in particular, feel free to look at this. I also put links to everything that I talk about, the patterns, the yarn I'm mentioning, as well as the links to my social media and my patterns, which are for sale on Ravelry, Payhip and Lovecraft, as well as my Patreon page, which you can have a look at if you'd like to support this channel and my design work in general in exchange for some different rewards. So, yay! I'm going to start quickly. I'm wearing my Ombrella Sweater, which is a design of mine that was published last year. And it's a cabled jumper, which is knitted in DK weight, and I'll put the link as well in the description if you want to have a look at this. But the first project I want to share with you is a new design that I just published on Ravelry, and it is a Colourwork pair of socks, which are the Rianelle Socks. So, yes. I had this motif drawn and in mind for ages. Initially, it's planned to be a sweater. I want to make a Colourwork sweater with this motif. And I actually believe it's going to be probably like a Christmassy thing, because the yarn I have for this said jumper is actually like cream, green and red. And I didn't do that on purpose, but might as well make it a Christmassy thing. But I also thought that the motif would look really nice on the sock. So here they are. They are a very simple pair of Colourwork socks. I think they're the easiest of my Colourwork sock designs. And yes, so what happened there is that I started knitting this one. And as I was knitting on it, I thought it would be fun for once to just have a mixed pair, a mixed design, like have the Colourwork on the leg, on the end of the foot, but have the middle in simple, plain, one color stockinette. And so this is what I did for this first sock. The design is knitted cuff down. You have a twisted rig cuff, you have a German short row heel, and a rounded toe. And you can also see that I changed my mind about color dominance. So if you needed a visual proof that color dominance, it's a detail, but it's a detail that is visible when you have the two options next to one another. So here I had the white color, so the background color dominant, which means that I held it left compared to the other one, so it went under the other one, and so it means that it's slightly more visible. And then I changed my mind, and so you can see that this and this are the same motif, but here the motif color, so the pinkish brown color is actually held dominant, so you can see it better. So yeah, I just thought I'd show you because I changed my mind when I was here and I was too lazy to undo like 6 rounds. And so I said, well, might as well use it as a demonstration then, for demonstration purposes. But yes, so I made this sock, which I really like. And then I started knitting on the other one. And then I just thought, well, I actually kind of want it to be full color work now. So yeah, that's what I did. And both instructions are included in the pattern. So I thought if you'd like this way, if you'd like a full-on colorwork sock like this, or a mixed one with the colorwork, you could even just do it only on the leg and have the rest of the foot be plain. And you could also have a mismatched pair like me if you can't decide. Yeah. So this is a very, very simple motif. It's short, it doesn't have any floats to catch, it's easy to remember, and yeah, you can have fun with it. Some of my testers made also the pair using various different leftovers, so you can have every stripe of motif be a different color. That's really fun too. And yeah, what else? I used Retrostaria's Mondim sock yarn, which is a pure Portuguese natural sock yarn. So everyone has different needs for sock yarns and different opinion on natural sock yarns. For me personally, the Mondim really suits me. It just depends on how you wear your socks. Do you wear them outdoors? Do you wear shoes? What type of shoes, etc. How densely were your socks knitted? Is there any type of specific motif that makes it sturdier? And for colorwork, the thing is, since you have like a double layer, they're usually sturdier for me. And I have a Mondim pair of socks that I had, I think it's one of the first socks that I ever knitted, and I've been wearing it loads, and I think it's the only one that I didn't have to mend the heel. So for me, it's really fitting. But the thing with knitting colorwork on socks is that I think it looks beautiful with any type of yarn, and it's perhaps easier to use superwash typical merino yarns in colorwork socks rather than in colorwork sweaters or something. Because if you're using superwash merino on a colorwork sweater or whatever else, it will absolutely work. But it might be more difficult if you're not comfortable handling your tension. If your gauge is a bit loose, then it won't look as good. Whereas since you're knitting socks and your gauge is dense anyway, using superwash yarn is just fine. So I find that colorwork socks are the most the one that accept the widest range of different types of yarn as far as colorwork goes. I don't know if I'm making myself very clear here. Well, anyway, the yarn possibilities are very varied. It's mirrored, the two motif. So you have a right chart and a left chart, so you can have them meet in the middle. And yes, so the pattern has instructions on how to get the right size for you, on how to adjust needle size and gauge, usually for small accessories like this. I personally tend to have a more hands-on approach, meaning that you'll see in the pattern, basically, I just advise you to knit a little bit of the colorwork, try on the sock, and see if you'd like it to be tighter or looser, and then adjust accordingly. That's usually my advice, is to be a little bit more, easygoing with small accessories. But there's also a very strict gauge instruction in case you prefer to go that route. So yes, these are the new designs, and they're available on all of my pattern stores, and on Ravelry they are 15% off for the release with the code Rianelle, I think. Everything will be written in the description anyway, so you can copy paste the code for the release until next Sunday. So yes, I also, since we're in sock territory, I also want to quickly mention that a design that was published in Making Stories issue 6, it's now available on its own individually, and these are the Vitrail Socks, and they're like more like slipper socks with a bit of more ease, or no ease at all rather. And they're also kaftan with a twisted rib cuff and this really fun texture motif, which is made of cables and a faux eyelet cable. You may recognize the motif from one cardigan design that I released last autumn, the Naive cardigan. And so yeah, in case you liked that motif but found the cardigan a bit too much, then they're on a sock as well. And the individual pattern is now available, and there is a written, charted instructions, as well as 2 heels instructions. You have the German short row heel, like the one on the sample, and a heel flap and gusset heel as well. And yeah, the pattern has also been translated in French, because I know some French people watch the English episodes, because like I'm already not eloquent in French, and apparently they like it even better when even less so in English. But yeah, and those are the 2 design news I wanted to share with you. And moving on to my work in progress, and I'm going to start with a big cabled jumper. So where do I start with this? I don't have in my wardrobe a big classic white or cream colored cabled jumper, and I really wanted one. And a few months ago, I think like around November or something, needles, Megan Babin from her Instagram handle is Mego Spurls, I think, and she has released a sweater in the Hudson and Westco brand range. You know, it's an American yarn brand. As far as I can tell, it's kind of like a woolly, I think it's woolen span, rustic, beautiful, gorgeous yarns from the US. And they have a range of designs that are released in their yarn. And Megan Babin released this really beautiful cabled sweater that was inspired by Chris Evans' Knives Out sweater, and it was the perfect one. That is what I wanted. And so I looked into what yarn I could use. There's no way I couldn't afford the original yarn, not only because it's coming from the States, but also because it's quite expensive. For my own means, I mean. But yeah, I started wondering what yarn I could use when I was contacted by Katia Yarns. Katia is a Spanish brand of yarn, and I've already talked about them quite a few times because I've been working with their yarns here and there. I bought myself, and they actually contacted me, seeing if I would be interested into trying their yarns, some of their new yarns, and I never want to accept yarns when it's not for a design. It's silly because I know that they do this for publicity, and it's like totally common marketing strategy nowadays. But in my head, if you give me free yarn, I need to work with it in a design. But I really wanted to try one yarn in particular, and I kept like mumbling in my head like, I don't like asking for stuff. But they're the one who offered me. And so I kept it like ruffling, and I talked about it with a friend, and she told me that I was stupid, which was accurate. And she told me to accept it. So I did. And I went over that block of not wanting free stuff to advertise for it if I was not going to make a design out of it. But I was interested in their Arles Merino new yarn. So Arles Merino is a European type of merino, French. Arles is a city in France. Beautiful. Not so far from where I live. And it doesn't mean that the sheep necessarily come from here. It's just a name for this type of wool. And I saw that they had this yarn, and I had the occasion way before that to see it in a yarn shop, and I thought it looked so plump. And indeed, like, look at how round that is. It's like super twisted, super squishy, and it's like the perfect fit for cables, I thought. And so this is the yarn that I asked them to send me. I got the colorway, I think it's 59. It's a cream colorway. They have a range of nice neutral colors as well, which are really sweet. Like, there's like a bunch of different white and light grays, which is really pleasing. And it's a decay weight. It's a super wash worsted spun yarn. And so far, I'm really enjoying it. During the knitting process, it totally fits my needs. I know that when I started knitting with it, someone mentioned that they were not happy with it. They had tried it and they were not happy because they found a knot in. They found one knot in the ball that they were using. So far, I haven't found any knots in mine, so maybe I'm lucky. But it's a normal thing to find knots in commercial yarn, and I'll admit that I'm not very picky with that, unless it's like when there's more than 3 knots per ball, then yeah, I'm gonna be a bit fussy, but it doesn't bother me much, and I didn't have any quality issues with the yarn at all so far, and I really enjoy knitting with it. It has a gorgeous cable definition. It's like really popping and really crisp, really smooth. And yeah, I will see how it is once it's washed the block and once I started wearing it, because especially since it's super wash yarn, I want to see if it peels, if it stretches and things. But so far, I'm really happy with this yarn. I'm really happy that I have that DK yarn at that price range. It's a 7-ish euros for 50 grams. And it falls within the same price category as De Rerum Natura, which is usually my go-to for middle-range commercial yarns. But De Rerum Natura's yarns, the one that I prefer, which are Ulysse and Gilliatt, Ulysse is more on the sport weight to fingering weight, and I like it at a gauge of 21 to 25 stitches, and Gilliatt is more worsted weight, and I like it at the gauge of 17, 18 stitches. I think that Gilliatt, when knitted at the 20-ish, 18 to 20 DK weight gauge, it's way too dense. I don't like how Gilliatt is when it's too dense. I love it if it's like open and like really airy and things, but it means that there's a gap here for a lot of garments who use DK weight yarn, and I don't want to use the finer one because it's going to be too loose. I don't want to use the thicker one because it's going to be too dense. I don't know, maybe there's an industry thing, because it's the same for Filcolana, which is another commercial brand that I love. They have the Pernilla one and the Peruvian Highland one, and Pernilla is more sport to fingering, and the Peruvian Highland wool is more worsted, and there's something is missing in between. And this in between is what I needed for this sweater. Now, the Real Natura, they have a DK weight merino yarn, which is worsted spun, but it has some silk. And I wanted a more classic wool jumper. I didn't mind if it was superwash, but I didn't want it to be too silky. And so yeah, there was a gap here. I didn't have a good commercial DK weight cable yarn. And so this is why I wanted to try this one to see if I could find the one that would fit. And it's in the same price range. Like I said, the whole quantity of yarn that I got would have amounted to about 96 euros. Cables eat a lot of yarn. And that's expensive. Not as expensive as if I would have gotten the yarn that the pattern is knitted in. But at least it's in the right thickness. And yeah, since it's cables and it's a big jumper, I know that for most of my other knitwear needs, I will use less yarn, so it's in the price range of the Real Natura, so that's great that now I have an alternative for this sort of gauge. And it's a completely different yarn, of course, than the woolen spun of the Real Natura, but at least it fits that gap in between the commercial yarns that I usually like to use. And so I will see how it is when it wears, and if I like it just as much as I do as I'm knitting it, then yeah, I'll be very pleased with that. And yes, so the pattern is great. There's a lot of pages because there's a waist shaping option, non-waist shaping options, and it's all written out differently in different blocks. I mean, there's also each setup part or the increase rates and everything. They're written by size group, and so basically there's 30-ish pages in the pattern, a bit less, I'm exaggerating, I think. But half of them I don't need. So it's just that you need to find your way in the pattern and make sure that you know where you are and to stay organized. That's a flaw that I have, is that I often forget to write details like this. So here I made sure to note down which size I was knitting, which version I was knitting, and where I am in the process. Because if not, if I stop and then I go back to it a few days later, I would be lost. But once you've read through the pattern and you see the section that you need to follow, it's very clear. There's no difficulty whatsoever. The one thing is knowing how to fiddle a bit with the cable and the decreases on the sides here. But if you have knitted cables on the sides of the raglan, because it is knitted flat in pieces. So, and you start with the sleeve and you increase here on the side, and basically you have a bit of a saddle thing, and then it's a raglan. So everything will be seamed, and this means that when you are decreasing in cable pattern, you need to know how to maintain it. It's not difficult if you've knitted cables before, but yeah, that's maybe the only thing that you need to think about, really. So I started by knitting one sleeve. The edges are in reverse stockinette. The cables are really fun and simple. These are some of the smaller cables, and they're really, really easy to remember. And once I've done a sleeve, I was able to memorize it. And whenever I say those things like it's easy, I memorized it, sounds like I'm nah. It's not because I'm super smart, it's because it's easy. And the reason it's easy is that once you are on the actual back, so that's the back, And as you can see, the same cables are here on the sides. And so this means that basically I was able to only follow this one. Like this one I can't memorize, it's too much for my itsy tiny brain. But I don't have to think about those, because when you're looking at them, like this one, for example, you know you need to cross it. I know I need to cross it every right side row. And so when I'm arriving at that cable, I just see where my stitches are, and I know, oh, okay, it needs to go this way, and then it needs to go this. And so I just do what I see is necessary for the motif to continue, and I don't need to look at the chart. Same thing with this one, which is really simple. This one, it's like every other right side row that you need to do one cross. And basically when I get there, I can see if I just made a cross, then I don't need to cross. But if the cross has been done a few rows below, then I know I just need to do the opposite one of the one that's just below. And this way, it allows you to only follow the center one. And the center one is so gorgeous, with like smock stitches in the middle, and like really beautiful, intricate, oh my god, intricate looking cables. But they're actually simple crosses. Just like, it's not many stitches that you cross each time, it's just that you do it a lot, and which is why I can't really remember it. However, every wrong side row is a rest row, which makes it much easier if you can read your knitting. I know not everyone likes to think that way and is able to do it. It's just how different people are wired. But I would always recommend at least trying to learn how to knit the stitches as established, because this makes motifs so easy, because a lot of them on the wrong side rows, which is the case here, you just knit the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches. So you don't need to look at the chart. You just look at your knitting, you see a knit stitch, you knit it. You see a purl stitch, you purl it. And this way you don't have to keep in your brain the sequence of the chart that is so intense and too much to think about. So yeah, and sometimes if there's twisted stitches, same thing. If it's a twisted stitch, when you twist it. And this makes a lot of different lace and cables much more accessible, because it means that half of the knitting, you don't actually need to look at the chart and focus too much. And it's cool, for example, if you have garments that are knitted flat on the upper body, but in the round in the lower body, it means that you don't have to focus on the wrong side. So it's something that I always advise people to try and learn how to do, is just look at your knitting and see if you can knit the knit stitches, if you can see what a knit stitch looks like and what a purl stitch looks like. And that will save you so much brain space and it will make a lot of different designs much easier. If that works for you. It doesn't work for everyone, but if that's a way of thinking that suits you, I think it's really worth trying to see, just in case you're the type of person that works with that mindset. And this is the case in this design, basically. The wrong side rows are just easy. And this is the back. And as you can see, there's the raglan decreases here. And I started knitting the second sleeve. This is what I like about flat seamed garments as well, is that it's easy to alternate because you're making two sleeves the same, the back and the front rather the same. And the fact that I can knit a small piece and a big piece and then a small piece and then a big piece, it makes it a little bit more varied and relaxing. So I started the second sleeve. And you can see here the edge, which will be seamed. I'm afraid it's gonna be too small. That's the thing with seamed garments, is that there's this sort of optical illusion. And the fact that it's cables, it's worse. it looks really small. And I did a gauge swatch, mind you, and it was correct. I never swatch. When I do swatch, then I have problems. See? It's a bit ridiculous that I'm worried about this because it's not blocked, it's not seamed, but it looks smaller than what I thought it would be. And I don't want the cables to look awful and super stretched, but normally it should be fine. It's just that I think I'm like 2-3 centimeters smaller because I did my swatch, which was good, but then I think that on the actual project I needed tighter because I was watching a lot of stressful movies. Yeah, it doesn't bother me so much, except that it's rather long. I knitted rather long, and the thing is, it will not go past my hips if it's too small. But yeah, my row gauge is smaller, which that I want because the armhole depth is too much for me. The armhole depth. Yes, the armhole depth. Well, it's too much for me, which I understand why it's that way because it's the shape of the which is working for men and women, anyone. It's slightly longer, but I would prefer it to not be that long, and so that's fine. But I just don't want my stitch gauge to be off. We'll see. I may be overthinking because really my gauge swatch is good and it's slightly bigger but not by much, so maybe it's just me. But twice this does not work for my hips. I'll see. I thought I sort of envision it oh my god, I can't take. I sort of envisioned it as having a lot more ease. So I don't know. I'll just do it and seam it and see if I like it. And if I don't, I will unseam it and I will knit something to fit in here. I can do that, right? Because I don't know. I'll have to see how things are at the underarm. Because the sleeves look fine, size-wise. I'll fiddle with something. Maybe I'll have to make a gusset. Worst case scenario, but we'll see. Yay! Maybe I should have knitted size 4. I'm knitting size 3. I kind of want to finish it quickly because of that to be sure of whether or not it will fit me. But yeah, I could also just crop it, to be honest, because that's the problem. Like, see, this one doesn't have that much ease, and I really love how it fits, but it's cropped because if not, it wouldn't work. And this one, I'm afraid, is not going to fit over my hips. But maybe the fact that the yarn is superwash is gonna make this work. We'll see. Moving on to my next work in progress, and so I have 4 different works in progress, and they're all having quite big motif to follow as I'm knitting in it. So I didn't have anything simple and more relaxing for when I needed to. So I decided to cast on stole/shawl/wrap that I wanted to knit with my yarn advent mini calendar. And I'm using the advent that I got from Les Petites Potions, which is a French indie dyer. And this was her steampunk themed advent calendar. You can see the minis here. Absolutely beautiful. I really love the moodiness of the colors. And I have I had the idea last year, this is why I got a few advent calendars, to make a couple of designs. And one of them would be a rectangular wrap that would use 12 colors plus one bigger skein. That's the plan, at least. Where is my sketch here? And so this is the plan. As you can see, each section has a number, and the numbers are like the different colors, right? So 1, 2, 3. Then I will bind off here. Then I will pick up and go the other way. Then 5, 6. The idea was to have something modular that would have fun constructions and that would be rather different and intriguing to knit as well. And so this is the parts which will use 12 different colors, although you could do it in just one color as well, or less than 12, just 6 or whatever. And then I plan to use the big skein to pick up stitches here at the edges and knit a little lace border on the sides of the shawl thing. And yeah, that's the plan. And the idea is to plan it for 12 mini colors, but you could also use leftovers and things. What I'm trying to do is to not use all my colors. So I have 20 gram minis, and I try to keep 6 or 7 grams of each. Now that's something that you have to think about when you're designing something, especially if it's meant to use small amounts of yarns or leftovers. The thing is, with this design, it's not like you can knit until you run out of yarn, and so you will need a certain amount of each color. And the thing is, I can't take the risk of designing my pattern using 20 grams complete of each color, because then if you don't have the same gauge, then you might run off. And it's more important for me that people don't run out of yarn. And the thing is, each of the different sections is gonna have a different texture. So there's gonna be 13 different textures total, so 13 different gauges. And there's no way we can make sure that we have the same exact gauge, stitch and row wise, on 13 different motifs to make sure that we use the exact same amount of yarn. So I have to make sure that I still have some yarn left over. This way it's also easier if you're using a fingering weight that has less meters per 100 gram. This one has 425 meter. That's 468 yards, I think, per 100 grams. And some of them have only 400 meter, 427 or 36 yards. I don't know. And or some of them, like the single yarns, they only have 366 meters. So these types of yarn will work as well with this design if you have about 20 grams of each color, even though technically I'm only using about 15, but I just really need to make sure that even if you have a different gauge than I do, you will not run out of yarn, basically. So this is the plan, and I have started here. So the first section was just garter stitch. The idea is that you pick up your mini of the day. If you would do this as part of an advent calendar, is that you would open your advent calendar and you could knit the same portion within the same couple of days, because it's only going to be 12, so you can do it one every 2 days. And the first one is garter stitch, and then I have this beautiful warm brown with a lot of really nice speckles. This is gorgeous. This is like a really, really beautiful color. I love it. Which is like garter stitch with twisted stitches. And then I just started the third part with this lovely green and it's going to be double moss stitch. And then I will bind off and pick up stitches here and go the other way. And yes, so I have no idea how it will end up looking. I have not planned all the different textures. I don't even know if I'm going to do the lace at the end, but I'm just going with the flow. So this is one of those designs. I want it to be really nice and airy and textured, yes, but simpler textures like ribbings, slipped stitches at the very maximum difficulty. So yeah, that's the plan for this wrap. It will be suitable for Advent, leftovers, even just one color, because it's all going to be different stitches in various directions. So that's going to be fun. I don't know when the test knit will be. I do want to release this in like November so that it's ready for the Advent season for people who will want to use it like this. You could also do an Advent but using leftovers. You don't have to buy an Advent calendar. You will just need however many colors you would like to use. I will incorporate a neater version of that sketch in the design so that you can plan your colors easily. And whenever this is tested, I'll see with my testers what they think would be useful to have to be able to plan accordingly. But yeah, this is my current relaxing project, so to say. And yes, I think I said everything. And that's it for all that I had to show for this episode. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found something that suited your personal knitting fancy. And yeah, thank you so much for watching and for your support. I will see you very soon with another episode in a couple of weeks. And yes, have a lovely rest of the day, evening, night, whenever you're watching this. And I will see you next time. Bye!